Hey, it's Mike here, and today, the biggest lie about veganism. Quite a sensational title from the popular YouTube channel AsapSCIENCE, which has about 10 million subscribers, and I will say has made a ton of great videos that I've seen before. The video, which has garnered well over 300,000 views in the last week, is not really about the biggest lie about veganism. It's a general vegan video. It focuses largely on health, but also environment, some other stuff. And I have to say, there are a ton of points in it that I totally agree on, and some others that I just want to chime in on. I even found a factual error, well, more of an out-of-date claim, and it's always just fun to do a point-by-point response to a video. Let's go. And really quick mini announcement, I finally finished my MPH, my Master of Public Health degree that I've been talking about for years, summa cum laude, because I took so long to finish it. And I coincidentally just found out about the beef industry's Masters of Beef Advocacy, a total bogus, non-accredited program just meant to spread beef propaganda. Fun stuff. Anyway, back to AsapSCIENCE. Again, a massive channel, and I really appreciate a lot of their videos. The recent one they did on, some bogus types of carbon capture. I think that stuff's super important. And the video, again, largely positive about a vegan diet, but at the same time has some points that could definitely, fear-monger people away from trying a vegan diet in the realm of like B12 and stroke risk and some bone stuff. So I wanted to respond to those. And a lot of times these science channels, when they do a vegan video, they really try to be balanced, which is good, but it's like negative point, positive point, negative point, positive point. And certainly other channels attempt to make an objective video by, popular culture standards in a meat-based society have massively exaggerated the negatives of veganism. Did they do that here? You can judge for yourself. They start off with,
veganism has exploded in popularity across the world. For some, it's out of sympathy for animals, but increasingly, many are swapping diets due to the environmental and health claims.
And I would nitpick really hard here and just say that people go on a vegan diet for health and environmental reasons like I initially did, but actual veganism itself as a lifestyle really does by definition require the animal aspect. So I just wanted to throw that in there. Moving on.
And is it even healthy at all? Or is the lack of animal proteins and nutrients actually detrimental to your body?
Ooh, so many scary questions. What are they going to say? Well, they actually start off with a brief environmental section. Here he is.
First up, is going vegan better for the environment? This is the easy part of the video because the answer is super simple. Yes. Study after study after study has found that a vegan diet, as compared to a full-on meat-eating or omnivorous diet, or even a vegetarian diet, uses less land, conserves more water, and produces less greenhouse gases, by about 70 to 80% compared to omnivorous diet.
Yes, greenhouse gas savings are a huge part of it, but don't even get me started on the massively lower Amazon/rainforest destruction and species extinction, the main cause of which is meat consumption, but I agree there. Let's keep it moving.
On to the more complicated subject of diet. Interestingly, some of the first athletes on a strict plant-based diet were the gladiators. All fighters' diets contained large amounts of legumes, pulses, and grains, and contained little to no animal protein.
Now into the health section, and this is always a fun paradigm-busting point because people always think combat equals manly meatness, blah de blah. Well, it appears that Maximus was hitting the asparagus. However, from the movie Gladiator, Julius Caesar, like real Caesar, probably not on a vegan or plant-based diet. However, Joaquin Phoenix, the actor who played Caesar, is vegan since birth and narrated the documentary Earthlings.
One of the big questions that comes up a lot is, did we evolve as vegetarians or meat eaters? I mean, we've got these sharp canine teeth that look just perfect for digging into flesh.
I actually thought he was being ironic here and joking because we don't have crazy, massive, sharp canines. That sketch right there doesn't even look like a human mouth. I feel like we inflate the size of our canines in our heads for whatever reason. Mouth, there's more or less a straight line there. Here is another mouth. You can just draw a straight line. There's no canines piercing any cow flesh anytime soon for humans. But to be fair, he goes on to admit that, large canines wouldn't even be exclusive to meat eaters anyway. They can have to do with defense and competition and on and on.
And if we look at the diets of modern primates, the ones we're closely related to, like chimps, orangutans, and gorillas, you'll see that most of them have totally plant-based diets.
And even that some of our closest relatives, like orangutans and gorillas, have some pretty massive canines, which of course leads to this meme. Can't argue with that.
If gorillas can get this jacked without the need for animal proteins, surely we're not meant to be eating meat. I mean, look at those muscles.
And a big point here when we're sort of appealing to nature, our own nature, I am more interested in the actual, recent studies on health outcomes by diet than I am on our anatomical structure. However, it is something that I have made videos on in the past and I have researched before. And he makes a point that I haven't even mentioned, which I thought was cool.
We've also got bumpy colons, which sounds very sexy, whereas carnivorous animals typically have a smooth colon.
And I would add that our digestive tract to torso ratio in terms of length really does fit in with other herbivores. And you might just say that doesn't even matter at all. Well, it does, because when you're talking about perhaps animal protein fermentation in the hindgut, which is not good and can do damage, lead to colorectal issues, which, red meat, class 2A carcinogen, processed meat, class 1A carcinogen, that's for a reason. Meat is in there for longer than it should be, longer than other animals that are eating a lot of meat have evolved to have it in there for.
But despite all these facts, the truth is there is no denying that our species turned to eating meat regularly. In fact, scientists estimate that our ancestors started eating meat around 2 million years ago, long before Homo sapiens even existed. And of course, there are many theories about how meat shaped the human brain.
Yes, meat was certainly part of our history. However, I always argue that it is a way exaggerated part of our history. Way too much steak, pun not even intended there, was put into it. But looking to a more recent PNAS, Proceedings in the National Academy of Sciences analysis, they found that over time, as our brains massively grew, meat eating did not really increase, and our bias in the archaeological record actually made it look like there were more animal bones than there actually are. Quite the words from one of the researchers, quote, "When you quantitatively synthesize the data from numerous sites across Eastern Africa to test this hypothesis as we did here, that meat made us human evolutionary narrative starts to unravel." A major driver that has been put forth instead is cooked starch, like Karen Hardy and her team mention here. It's a great source of preformed glucose, which feeds our massive brains. And today's sponsor is Seed's DS01 Daily Synbiotic, and it is still springtime here at Seed, which means 40% off your first month's order, a limited offer, as well as another 3 awesome healthy spring foods we're gonna look at. But real quick, you should know that a synbiotic is a prebiotic with a probiotic, and in this case, we're talking about 53.6 billion active bacterial cell units from 24 different strains that are scientifically shown to support gut immunity and gut barrier health, digestive health, heart health, skin health, and more. Over the winter, you might not get as much fresh foods. Vegetables might be more expensive, and that can hurt gut health. So let's look at 3 awesome springtime foods to help your gut, starting with leeks. They have prebiotics and are in the allium family, so they contain thiosulfonates, which have bad gut bacteria fighting activity, as this study shows. For food number 2, we have mint. Mint compounds are antimicrobial as well and beneficial, reducing harmful bacteria like strep. And finally, we have arugula, which is a cruciferous vegetable, and they contain special ligands that from this recent 2023 study show hugely beneficial intestine barrier effects. And of course, to accompany all of that good food, you want some good bacteria, which brings me back to Seed DS01 Daily Synbiotic, which Lindy and I have been taking since 2001. And I always mentioned Lindy because she's just seen so many benefits with it and loves it. And finally, if you do want to get that 40% off your first month supply, click the link below and use the code MIC, M-I-C, at checkout.
So then, can we survive without meat at all? Some people might tell you that you simply can't get enough protein without meat, but that's really not true. Most research finds protein deficiency extremely rare, except in people who are simply not eating enough calories.
Yes, I'm so happy that the whole protein thing seems to just be less and less of a concern every year. And I hosted my Vegan Jeopardy, did a presentation recently, and the question that everybody always fails, as they did this time, even no one in the audience knew it, is what is the official name for a protein deficiency? It's kwashiorkor. This is not a modern concern, again, if you're eating enough. And just to nip that one in the butt, saying it wrong. This study did find that the serum albumin, which is blood protein of vegans, was higher than meat eaters. Just a fun another point to throw in there.
But what research has found is missing from a vegan diet is B12. And the thing is, you cannot get B12 from any vegetables.
This one, not factually correct anymore, at least. No, there are plants now that we know of that have bioactive B12. The main one is duckweed or water lentils. Yes, this analysis, this test did show that it had several types of bioactive B12 in amounts that would be, biologically relevant. And that's likely due to a symbiotic relationship with bacteria in the plant. Duckweed's pretty ubiquitous around the world and has been used in Asian cuisine. And there's an even lesser known plant that likely has bioactive B12 from a symbiotic relationship, and that is sea buckthorn. Yes, this 2021 Polish study asked, what popular products in the market in Poland might happen to have some B12 in them, and they found two. One was sea buckthorn jam, and the other was pickled parsley juice. They had enough B12 to prevent deficiency. However, parsley doesn't naturally have that B12 symbiotic relationship. It's likely from whatever bacteria were fermenting the product.
And studies find that B12 deficiencies are a big problem for a lot of vegans and vegetarians.
He said B12 deficiency is a big problem for vegetarians and vegans. The thing is, the context, the timeline here does matter. Yes, in the past, we've seen a very notable difference between vegan and meat eater B12 levels, but newer studies over and over again show that vegans don't have an increased level of B12 deficiency. Yes, I think that vegans should be very aware and it should still be a concern to get enough B12, but I think there's a case to actually challenge the validity of that claim altogether in the present tense. And moving forward to nutshell, he says there are other nutrients of concern that can easily be supplemented for, and I would just add that a lot of people take a vitamin, multivitamin, whether they are vegan or not, and a vegan multivitamin can just cover your bases really well. That's that. Next.
Cow's milk, which naturally contains calcium and is absorbed easily into the body, is often promoted for good, strong bones. And a research study from 2020 backed this up when it found that vegans have a much higher risk of breaking their bones than meat eaters. And their risk of bone breaks was basically twice as likely.
I have a whole video on that study and we'll get into it in a bit. I feel like I just need a little sign that says I have a whole video on this because I could lift it up in every single section. Anyway, he did hit on some counterpoints even to his point, so let's cover those. He says,
but here's the weird part. When we look at countries that simply don't drink as much milk as a whole, this pattern doesn't hold. And a study that compared 40 countries' consumption of dairy also found that those who had little milk were not any more likely to break their hips.
And I would add that 70% of the planet's population is lactose intolerant. Does that mean they're strong bone intolerant? Nope. Also mentions that within some northern countries, more milk doesn't even equate to less fracture as well, so we have a lot of conflicting data. But we can agree that, getting enough calcium is necessary, and calcium is the most abundant mineral in the body. Who else watches TikTok street trivia? Me, probably too much. So what's going on with that vegan bone study there, the epic Oxford one? Well, I've talked about how BMI plays a massive role in fracture risks. And yes, these studies try to adjust for BMI, but we're still just estimating that adjustment, which means it can be inaccurate. Vegans tend to have a lower BMI, but a higher BMI is, really good at increasing bone density because of that repeat pressure and also having some extra padding if you do fall. From this study, a recent weight loss nearly doubled bone fracture risk. And yeah, people who go vegan tend to lose weight. And I think the most compelling point about BMI is that in this study, the vegans who were over a BMI of 22.5, which is not even that large, didn't have an increased risk of bone fractures compared to meat eaters. Also, that male vegans, possibly due to testosterone, didn't have an increased risk of bone fracture compared to non-vegan males. So all of this is pointing to that there isn't some missing nutrient in the vegan diet that's making people, crack some bones. It might just be a BMI issue, that the adjustment for BMI could have had some flaws in it. Anyway, moving on to the scary one. Oh my gosh, vegans have an increased risk of stroke. Holy crap.
Finally, on the bad side, research has found that both vegans and vegetarians are at a higher risk for stroke. However, the overall risk is small, around 3 extra cases per 1,000 people over 10 years. And this particular study had many limitations, including quite a small sample, so it's difficult to draw major conclusions from it.
Oh, this could definitely scare somebody away from being vegan, especially if they have stroke in their family, but should it actually? Well, let's talk about those limitations. First of all, when they say vegan and vegetarians had an increased risk of stroke, well, they lumped, a small amount of vegans with a large amount of vegetarians. And that was because due to statistics, no claims could be made specifically about vegans. They were not statistically significant in findings on stroke. So again, no claims can be made about vegans, but you can lump them together with vegetarians and then make that claim. So does that mean that, vegetarians should be afraid of stroke? Well, looking to the Adventist studies, vegetarian males had about a 20% lower risk of stroke. And then to this Taiwanese study on vegetarians, they had 50% lower risk of stroke, which is huge. And of course, both of those groups have a certain portion of the vegetarians as vegans. From other Adventist studies, we're talking about around 20% of vegetarians being vegan, depending on the study. Finally, when talking about a vegan diet, we have to acknowledge Dr. Esselstyn's study that put about 200 people on a whole food vegan diet, people with advanced cardiovascular disease. A lot of them had adverse events like stroke and heart attacks and other things in the past. Well, over 12 years of that 21 people that quit the diet, there were 2 strokes and a 60% overall rate of adverse cardiovascular events. Yet of 177 people that stayed on, just 1 stroke and no other cardiovascular events. And next, they do get into a bunch of positive health points about a vegan diet. I just wish that they didn't put them toward the end where less people watch. Anyway, I'll just let you listen to them.
So are there any specific health benefits to going vegan? Definitely. A study on over 90,000 people found that vegans are less likely to develop high blood pressure, obesity, type 2 diabetes, some types of cancer, and are more likely to live longer. A vegan diet lowers cholesterol, and many of these foods contain a lot of antioxidant phytonutrients. These anti-inflammatory effects are believed to be the reason vegan diets seem to minimize some autoimmune diseases. There was up to a 32% lower risk among those with the highest intake of plant-based foods for cardiovascular disease, even after adjusting for age, sex, race, education, health behaviors, alcohol intake, and exercise. So yes, on average, the health of vegans does tend to be better.
They then hint that some of those benefits could actually just be due to vegans making healthier choices in other areas of life, that healthy user bias.
Of course, it's also possible that vegans are just generally more health conscious to begin with. Vegans do tend to smoke less, drink less alcohol, and exercise more, and whether it's something bad in meat and dairy or helpful in all the extra veggies is yet to be determined.
Now, that healthier stuff is generally adjusted for, but like with BMI and fractures, adjustments can be inaccurate. However, we have a bunch of other studies showing the mechanisms behind these lower disease rates. For example, take people, put them on a vegan diet, and their inflammation markers go down. Inflammation fuels all of these diseases that we're talking about. They also have way lower heart disease risk markers like LDL cholesterol, around 70, which is, like 40 points lower than the average American. And I have several videos on all of those disease mechanism connections, but they continue with junk food, veganism.
Of course, it's worth pointing out that it's just as easy to be an unhealthy vegan, with all the options for junk and processed food nowadays.
And I would say, yes, I am really worried about this changing the outcomes for vegans. I mean, our high saturated fat coconut oil and palm oil are just making their way into so many vegan products. You no longer have that healthier black bean burger option at restaurants. It's always just like the processed burger that's popular at the moment, which is awesome for people trying to transition away from meat to get something that tastes and feels the most like actual animal body parts, but maybe not the best for health outcomes for vegans in the future. So I really hope that vegans don't miss the opportunity to be healthy and we can keep eating healthy vegan food. In the end, I don't know what the biggest lie actually was here. I don't think it really even needed to be about that. It seems to be more of a series on their channel. It's a good title, I guess, for people to watch, get some views, and that doesn't matter. I will say though that there were a bunch of solid points that they made, and I appreciate those points. However, I don't think we have these massive sharp canines. And to nitpick, of course, some plants do have bioactive B12 in the amounts that can get stuff done. Also, the stroke and bone fracture studies, again, can be a little inconsistent with other studies, or just in terms of how they're adjusting. There are limitations, and that that BMI issue. But yeah, the list of vegan health benefits is very, very long, as you saw. But I will say something that wasn't very long in this video was just the animal benefits of going vegan. I mean, we kill like 70 billion chickens per year. You know, in order to have cow's milk, you have to have a new round of calves born every season. Now, these are the things that are really just the tip of the iceberg for going vegan in terms of animals. And of course, if you would like to try Seed's DS01 Daily Symbiotic, you can click the link below and use the code MIC, M-I-C, for 40% off your first month's order, which is huge and a limited offer. And also, definitely let me know down below what you thought about all of this, if there was anything in the video I missed or claims you want me to elaborate on. And as usual, feel free to like, subscribe, all that good stuff, and I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching. I say the same thing every time at the end.